Some school districts are saying that kids need to be vaccinated in order to participate in extracurricular activities. Los Angeles, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. are just some of the cities implementing vaccination rules for activities outside of the classroom. Some places are particularly concerned about sports. So Juan Perez Jr. joins us now. He's an education reporter for Politico to talk about this. Juan, thanks so much for joining us. So, this is an interesting idea, but it only actually affects the kids that are participating in sports or other extracurricular activities. Why only focus on that when they could maybe focus on something that would incorporate a larger student population, or a larger portion of the student population?
That's a good question. Good morning, and thanks for having me. To get to the heart of it, I think there are a few reasons why athletes and students participating in extracurriculars are moving towards the front of the list. And I think one of the main ones involves risk. So infectious disease experts tell me that students who are participating in extracurricular activities, especially those that involve close contact with other individuals, they could be at higher risk of potentially contracting COVID-19. And part of the issue with adolescents is, especially in athletics, it's really hard to be distanced in many sports. Wearing a mask is difficult, if not impossible to do under certain circumstances. So what you're seeing here is, I think it's fair to say, an emerging new front in how we try to get control of the virus, but that's a huge task.
So let's talk about the risks surrounding COVID-19 and high contact sports, especially indoor winter sports. My nephew is a high school senior. He's a big hockey player, plays at a very high level. I'm wondering what kind of risks his parents should be thinking about, even though he's vaccinated.
That's a good question. I think it helps to think a little bit about what exactly low risk and high risk mean. So let's dig into that a little bit. The CDC sets out a few examples for each category. So when they cite something like low risk sports, what they're talking about are things like swimming and diving, golf. Medium risk sports might be something more like baseball and cross country. But the high risk sports are ones that we're really thinking about right now in Friday Night Lights season, and that's football and also wrestling as well. We're going to have to think about basketball too. I also think it's important to note that it's not just sports that we're talking about either. The CDC, for example, notes that high risk extracurricular activities are those in which there's just extra breathing happening, and that kind of makes sense. But you think about activities that involve singing, shouting, band, exercise, especially activities that are conducted indoors. Now, you were talking about risk a moment ago, and it's important to note something else here. These school reopening guidelines from the CDC include a pretty blunt warning that has perhaps flown a little bit under the radar in some sectors of the public. High-risk sports and extracurricular activities, the ones we just talked about, the CDC recommends they should be canceled in areas where the virus is spreading at high levels, unless all of the participants are fully vaccinated. It's clear that all the participants aren't necessarily fully vaccinated yet. And as of yesterday, at least, the CDC noted that 86% of US counties are considered high transmission areas. That's a big improvement from 2 weeks ago. We should note that. But we're still talking about basically the entire country here. Games haven't been canceled en masse, though, and things are looking fairly normal in stadiums across the country.
So, on the professional level, we've certainly seen athletes reject this idea. I'm talking to you, Kyrie Irving, though we don't know whether or not he's been vaccinated or not. All signs point to not. They are going to forego millions of dollars without being vaccinated. Students don't risk that much, I suppose. So I'm wondering, are there student athletes who are saying, I don't want to get the vaccine, and is there an alternative for them? Can they be tested?
That's actually a great question. And the answer is yes. I think generally speaking, it depends on where you are and where you live and the nature of your mandate. But students, in many cases, are able to opt out of getting vaccinated. The question is whether they still get to participate in these activities or not either, and that can be a huge penalty. This is going to be an interesting space to watch. For example, in some areas, students can simply submit to regular testing if they decide not to get vaccinated, or perhaps if they're not eligible to get vaccinated. But others in certain jurisdictions simply aren't allowed to participate at all. Again, it depends on where you live and how expansive your local area's mandate or opt-out requirements are.
So are there student athletes deciding not to get vaccinated, and what other choices do they have?
So that's a good question. I think the test to participate requirement is one thing you're going to see happening a little bit more as these things begin to expand across the country. But from my perspective, I think it still might be a little bit too early to know for sure how broadly these mandates are catching on with students and how many students are participating. Personally, I want to see a little bit more data on who's participating, who's opting out, and one important note, how schools are going to make progress with actually verifying that athletes or band members or other kids who are subject to these requirements are actually vaccinated.
Listen, Juan, one of the markers, if you will, of the pandemic and how this country has handled it is that at every step of the way, it has exacerbated racial disparities. And so I have to ask whether or not that is coming up with this discussion as well, with, student athletes. Are we noticing racial disparities?
I think it is a little bit too early to say. Although I think it's fair to extrapolate the data that we've seen so far about existing racial disparities amongst adult vaccinations. We can look at data about vaccine hesitancy in certain regions of the country. And I think it's fair to kind of take those sorts of numbers and use that as context to kind of suggest where we might be seeing broader hesitancy or where we might just be seeing outright resistance to the virus, to the vaccine mandate rather. But whether these mandates work is an enormous question, because it's clear that vaccine mandates are already a normal part of life in American education. But like you said, we know that this pandemic has deepened political divides in this country, not just racial and economic ones. And we know that hesitancy or outright opposition to the vaccines can get a little bit more intense when children are involved.
All right. Really important reporting there. Juan Perez Jr., thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.